Give him 30 seconds or a minute.
I was like, I wasn't sure when I was.
When you are, man.
So. City Hall opened at 7:40. It was like 7:15, I think, when I started smelling the electrical burning smell. And so, I know he's.
Good afternoon. Well, welcome everybody to the February meeting of the Transportation Technical Coordinating Committee. My name is Matt Minier. I'm with the city of Jeffersontown. I want to welcome everybody here today. Andy, would you call the roll?
Yes, sir, sure will. Let's see, start off with Bullitt County. City of Charleston. City of Jeffersontown.
Here.
City of Jeffersonville. City of Mount Washington. City of New Albany.
Larry Summers is here.
City of Shepherdsville. City of St. Matthews. About Clark County. Brian?
I don't think Bryce was here today.
Floyd County. I see Nick. Nick's coming back to his desk. Hello, Nick. Let's go back a couple. City of St. Matthews. Keena Stratman online. Hi, Keena. Anybody from IDEM? INDOT. About? Anybody else from INDOT? Okay. Kentucky DAQ. KYT office.
Isidro Delgado.
KYTC D5. Tom. Did I see Tracy?
Tracy Lowell.
Get this here. KYTC Office of Transportation Delivery. Louisville Metro Air Pollution Control District. That's all Rachel. Hi, Rachel. I'll see you. Claire Euler from Kentucky DAQ is also here. I called DAQ a minute ago. She couldn't get to her mic button in time. So thank you, Claire, for joining us. APCD. Next on the list is listed as Louisville Metro Economic Development. About Louisville Metro Planning and Design.
Yeah, I'm here. Brian Davis.
Metro Public Works. Anybody on from the Airport Authority? Maybe. Probably not. Oldham County Government. Hey, Jim. Oldham County Planning Commission.
Anna Barge.
Hi, Anna. Thank you for joining us. Port of Indiana, Jeffersonville. Back to the top of the list, Bullitt County. Here. Where to go? TARC Accessibility Advisory Council. Town of Clarksville. Brad, I see you.
Here.
And TARC. Thank you for joining us. And it looks like we might have a few of our advisory members on. Oh, I know I missed one. Louisville Riverport Authority. I see you, Miguel. Hi, Miguel.
Hello.
Who just joined us? Arthur Jones from the city of Shepherdsville. Thank you for joining us, Arthur. Who else do we have? Do we have got Nick? How about Federal Highways Administration? I think I saw Lakeisha.
Yes, Lakeisha. Thank you.
Lakeisha, would you like to introduce yourself real quick? I don't know that our committee knows much about you.
Yes, okay, there got my camera. Hi, everyone. My name is Lakeisha Stewart. I'm a community planner here at Federal Highway Indiana Division. So I'll be taking over KIPTA while Erica is the acting division administrator right now.
Yeah, for those that didn't hear, Erica Tate, who you all probably know and have seen at our meetings, and she's moved up. Is that's still on an interim basis? Is that correct to say,
Correct.
Lakeisha?
Yes.
Correct. So we're happy to have you, Lakeisha.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. Did I miss anybody else online? If so, I apologize. And if so, please introduce yourself.
Sure. Hey, everybody, this is Jack Harrison from One Southern Indiana, member of our economic development team.
Okay, thank you for joining us, Jack.
Absolutely.
We definitely have a quorum. We got a full house online and mostly in the room too. So it's good to see everybody once again, and let's get started. We got a full agenda.
Thank you, Andy. Next item on the agenda is the November TTC meeting minutes. Everybody should have received them in your packets. I asked if there were any corrections to those minutes.
I did know that it says, in the Seymour district is absent. I represent the Seymour district, so.
Okay.
And you were here, okay.
Can we make sure everything
Yes.
changed?
With that one correction, if there are no more, I will entertain a motion for passage. Got a motion, is there a second? Or a second? Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Opposed, nay? Motion carries. Next on the agenda is the Transportation Policy Committee report. Andy?
Yes, I not only have the November report that the agenda has, I've got, you get bonus, but I want to get one free. I've got a January report for you guys too. So on Tuesday, November 26th, KIPTA hosted our TPC meeting over at St. Matthews. That was kind of our annual meeting where the city of St. Matthews hosted us at the end of the year. We had a luncheon afterwards. So I know many of y'all were in attendance. That meeting, among other things, we had Deputy Mayor George and Public Works Director Jennifer Commissar. They spoke to us about the newly formed Louisville Department of Transportation. So they kind of gave us a presentation on what that means now, and maybe what it means going forward. So that was interesting. We talked a little bit about officers for that committee and the never-ending conversation about the Indiana dedicated funding, fiscal 25. We had a conversation about that. We also announced our kite award winner at that meeting, didn't we, Greg? And then that's about it. So I'll move forward. And in January, as you remember, we did not meet in January on account of weather. So we had a January TPC meeting. That was another meeting where we talked about the dedicated funding. We gave updates on the call for projects that's going to culminate this month with some approvals and recommendations for approvals. We talked a little bit about the, I think we talked about, I don't know, I think we've talked about in this committee, is the Reconnecting Communities Pilot Program grant funds that KIPTA received a grant for. That's probably happened since the last time this committee met, so it's probably worth mentioning again today. That's a joint effort between KIPTA and Kentucky Transportation Cabinet. And the award that we received within the past month or two has been, I think it was 14 million in federal funds to be matched with 13 million in the so-called grant program of 2024. Those are the state economic development funds, to be matched with a very small, what, $1 million, $1.5 million, $2 million, something like that, to round out to 30 million by KYPC and or Louisville Metro to cover that project. That project is going to make improvements on and along and near I-64 in the Portland community, which it would enhance the ability for a pedestrian or bicyclist to get across I-64 through some pedestrian crossings, improvements around the 22nd Street interchange, and then just some frankly, just some cleaning up of the I-64 corridor and just looks wise, aesthetics wise, to make it just a more pleasant looking freeway. So that's something we're real excited about. Don't know. There's some things have changed since we met last time, but we still feel comfortable, and then we haven't heard anything to the contrary about that grant and its status. So we're looking forward to getting that going before too long. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions about those two meetings. Many of y'all were at some of those, so please feel free to chime in if I missed anything important.
Thank you, Andy. Any questions for Andy? Seeing the next item on the agenda is number 4, public comment period. Greg?
Not having any public comments in the Q&A. Did not receive anything prior to the meeting either. So if anything comes up, I'll bring it up in business.
Great. Any questions for Greg? Next item on the agenda is the U of L Railroad Pedestrian Pedway Study. Andy?
Yes, thank you. This is we've got some representatives from U of L here today to present to you guys about a study that they completed, and they completed it really quickly, and it's fantastic. That's a study that utilized KIPTA's PL funds. When we distribute our PL funds annually, it goes to projects like this, and we like to showcase them at this meeting, at TPC meetings. So Kim Noltemeyer is here to talk a little bit about what they have going on with the railroad crossing over near the speed school, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so thank you all for joining us.
Yeah,
Floor yours.
again, I'm Kim Altemeyer. My colleague is Carrie Whitmore. We both work in planning, design, and construction at the university. So Carrie's actually building the speed school building. So she's over that. What we did is we looked at our master plan and the fact that we're building a building over there across the railroad track is nothing right at the moment, but the future is, the hope is that we have a research park over there. So we're trying to be proactive so we can have an idea of what students want in that, so that we can present that if we ever get asked, and hopefully we can do that. Okay. Okay.
It's white.
Am I not doing it?
That's weird.
Maybe you want to reload it real quick?
That's weird. Okay, I guess I'll do it like that. Sorry about that.
That's okay. Okay. So the way we started off, again, going and looking at a feasibility study for that space. We do have a parking lot on the other side of the railroad track. So if we did build a bridge prior to the research park being there, we would still have a function for students to be able to get over to their parking spots. So the first thing we did was looked at our master plan, which we just completed in 2024. Looked at that to see, where are we going on campus, buildings, all that for the next, 10 years? 10 years. So, looking at that and then planning, how do we proceed there so that we know what we're doing? We got Luckett and Farley to step in. They are actually building the speed school building right now. So they are very familiar with the speed school campus. That whole area is all speed school. So there are several buildings there and they have a good idea of, how things work over there with them building that building. One thing we had to take into account is CSX because it is their railroad. So making sure we meet all of their standards and everything. So we did have to check with them. One thing we checked into first was being able to go underneath. And they immediately said no. So we're going to go over. So that's how we got to doing a pedway over the railroad track. So Luckett and Farley did some analysis, looked at, how is this where is it gonna cross? What is the traffic, population, those type of things, who's gonna be accessing that headway and everything to go over. I think we moved the next one.
Yep, there we go.
So this is a little bit more, they actually looked at traffic studies, pedestrian studies, things like that. Right now, there's a roadway, you can turn off Eastern Parkway into the speed school. So they also took into account, do we want to close that off? To make it more, it's safer for students, safer for pedestrians that are walking to and from buildings. Who knows? I think it's wonderful.
See if number 6 works.
No,
Like some of the tiles are.
like, yeah, it's just something else and come across or something. Well,
I apologize, Kim. Flow correctly or something.
yeah,
Just got some.
Have a quick file or something.
Yeah. Maybe we can,
Well, I can tell you what's coming up.
yeah, how about-
So the first thing they did was also look at, after they did the traffic studies and everything, they looked at what we currently have. So we currently have pedways going from our Floyd Street parking garage over to the Belknap campus. We have a couple pedways going from parking lots or street, both are parking lots, over to some housing areas, so down around the Reynolds Lofts. There's one that goes over to some housing on the other side that's on 4th Street. And then we have one that goes over to the retreat, which is back down a little bit by the student rec center. So we already have those. We also have one that's downtown that goes between a couple of our buildings, which is more of a glass one, so it goes across. So they looked at those just to see what we already have, how well are they, is it something we want to do again? Do we like the way it was constructed? Do we like the way they look? Is it welcoming, that type of thing? So, so we did take into consider all of that.
that's fine, that's fine. Do you have the flash drive? Maybe I can try.
Yeah.
Reload it again.
Yeah.
See if that works.
That see all of our pretty pictures.
Yeah, no, I've seen the pictures and the concepts, so let's see. I'll vouch for it. Brady saw it too. It'd be right next to the can opener, but far more inviting.
Yes. Well, and right now, students, if they're in that parking lot, they have to walk
Yeah.
down that way to be able to get to their classes. And this would provide them going straight on campus and not having to do that Eastern Parkway loop right there.
Hang with us, folks online. We're trying to get it brought back up. Well, we might have something here.
Okay.
I'll just have to drive it, so just let me know when you need to change.
That works. So this is an idea of what we already have. So I mentioned the glass one that's down on HSC campus, the Health Sciences campus. That goes between two of our buildings. And then the one up in the top corner on the left is one that goes from our rec center over to the retreat housing facilities over there. So we looked at all of those, are they what we like? A couple of them, we kind of went, no, we don't like that. So, we want it to be more inviting for students, feel safe and that type of thing. You wanna play to the next one? So Lincoln Farley came up with several designs. They actually went out and looked at other universities, other cities, other pedways that, they've seen elsewhere, and gave us some examples of those. And this is kind of their putting it all together, saying, here are your options, or some options that you might want to think about. We can go on to the next. This one is going to tell you, this one is going into how high does it need to be, how long does it need to be to get over those railroad tracks, which CSX has specific calculations that we have to follow to be able to do that, which we've already done that with one of our pedways anyway. We crossed CSX at another phase too. So they wanted to make sure that they also outlined, and this one shows all of the utilities that, they've looked at to make sure, you know, if we're gonna build it, we gotta make sure we go around the utilities or, take into account those are there. What's the next one? So this is, they did a couple designs, and this is one where they kind of mocked it up to say, you know, this is kind of what it could look like. So it was good, they provided us several different options, so it was good to look at that and just say, yeah, this is a possibility, and think about what we like or don't like. Next. This is some more. So those, the ones where they give us drawings of here's your options, they're drawing those out as to what it would look like if it was actually on the. If we actually did this, so mocking it up in that spot, so we know what it looked like. And that's a couple more, they had several. So, but it was good. All right, so we kind of advertised. Let the students know we were gonna be doing a session where they could give us some feedback. So what we did is, student, staff, and faculty, actually, everybody. What we did is we camped out in our student activity center at lunchtime. So tons of people are crossing and going back to get lunch and coming out. So we were able to capture quite a bit of information. We had lots of speed school students stop and really get into it because they like to build bridges. So we got their opinions on what was going on. So what we did is basically they had little dots and the students would come up with a dot of where they liked it the most, or they gave suggestions on, you know, here's what I need. An example, we had a student that said, I'm in a hurry. I don't have time to walk a ramp or anything like that. I need steps to go up and get to where I need to go. Well, you can't just have steps because you have people that can't do steps. So, of course, we had the others go, no, I like the ramp that goes around because it's easier for me to get up and down. So after we took all of that and like it probably kind of looked at everything, what we did is combine a couple of them. So on the next one. So this was our final concept, and basically it's, we have a ramp, but we also have stairs that go up. So the ramp will come up to the top of where the stairs are. And everybody can meet there and go down to the other side. So this is just an idea of what it could possibly look like. So we have a ramp on the side, where bikes, you know, scooters, anyone that is in wheelchairs or whatever will be able to use that. But there's also stairs so that the students can go up the stairs if they're in a hurry and that's just their preference. The other is looking a little bit at what do you want it to look like? It is an engineering school, so we kind of wanted to look something like they would develop. So we kind of went with that wrought iron, some glass on the sides, those type of things that they would have their input. Go next. And so that's a overhead view. The ramp on one side, going across the railroad track, and then it would be a ramp and stairs on the other side also. So you're getting the same thing on both sides. Go next. Just another view. This is where it would show where we block off that walkway or driveway. So it would be, those would be blocked off. That wouldn't be a driveway anymore. We have a driveway that goes behind the school, so if anybody need to come up and park, they could, like for handicap parking and things like that. We have a back way to get in. So this just gives you an idea of, you know, mock-ups of how it would look if we went with this path. Next. Just another idea of what it would look like. And if you'll notice, there's a lot of green spaces. The students wanted green spaces. To stop and have lunch, to stop and study, to just enjoy the outside when it's nice outside and not snowing. So we made sure that was in there. Another thought was you can make a not an amphitheater. You know, you could use grass to make steps or amphitheater type things there where kids could go in You would have a class out there if you really wanted to, but, you know, so that was another idea that they really liked. Go next. Again, just another look at what it would look like. Another concept was if we do, assuming a research park does go in, because this is a concept, so in a study, it's not gonna go in anyway soon. The other thought is if there are buildings on the other side of the railroad track, we just feed right into that building. So they would walk up the ramp and go right into the building across the way, so that was another option. And that's it. Any questions?
Thank you, Kim. Is there any questions for, Ida?
Just curious, what was the cost estimate? We got a cost estimate, I don't remember what it is off the top of my head. Which I'm sure will change between, absolutely, the time they gave us and now it's probably changed, right?
What's the prognosis on that research park? Is anything imminent, those buildings, but, or not necessarily?
Not at the moment.
Okay.
Not at the moment. We got 2 buildings to build right now. Carrie's gonna finish up the speed school, but.
All by herself?
We have
All by myself.
all by herself. We also have our building downtown that we're getting ready, we're preparing and planning right now, so that's gonna take several years to build. And I know there would be a big focus on that. Now, what's on the other side is really owned by our foundation.
Mhm.
They own that property, so it would really be up to them when they want to start building. And they-
Are these tied into the pedestrian that crosses the railroad to get to the Cardinal Stadium as well?
No, it only goes over to. the
Purely
parking
just to
lot.
this area?
Yeah.
Okay.
It would be nice, but
Yeah, it's tricky with all those railroad tracks crisscrossing there.
Yeah,
it is, they're.
yeah. Well, thank you, Kim. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Next time on the agenda is a TTC Officer Nominating Committee. Andy?
Yes, so, it's been over a month now since this was an agenda item that was supposed to be on our January agenda. The TTCC working group, or excuse me, the nominating committee, met, I think it was probably early January, like sometime in December, to discuss this committee's 2025 officers. And, if I might, I guess I'll announce who they nominated, if that's okay with you, Mr. Chairman. The nominating committee chose to nominate, Aida Kopit as our 2025 chair. And then Jim Silman from Oldham County as our 2025 vice chair. So those were the 2 individuals that were nominated by the nominating committee. So I think at this time it'd be appropriate to seek any other nominations by the committee.
Thank you, Andy. Is there any other nominations for chair or vice chair? See any? Seeing none, we'll close the nominating session. We do have a nomination in for chair, Aida Kopik, and vice chair Jim Solomon. We need to take them separately, or?
We can take them together.
Okay.
That's like,
If that's the will, I will entertain a motion to approve Aida as chair and Jim Solomon as vice chair. We have a motion. Is there a second? Second. Any other discussions? All those in favor signify by saying aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay sign. No, motion carries. Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Aida.
Thank you.
Jim Solomon, look forward to working with you. Next item on the agenda is Amendment 8 of the fiscal year 2023-2026 Transportation Improvement Program and Connecting Kentucky into 2050. Chris? That's a mouthful, yeah.
Right. Afternoon, everyone.
To a 3-letter agency.
Okay. So I'm gonna present our amendment 8. We're working hard to move to the fiscal year 25 to 28 tip by early summer, so this should be the last amendment to the current tip. It includes numerous project updates requiring air quality conformity analysis, and the project updates included they vary between the 2 state transportation agencies some of the LPAs and also TARP. We've got 69 projects total, with the bulk of the updates needed after the release of the Kentucky 2024 to 2030 highway plan. More projects equals more comments. I think we had a bit of a higher rate of comments than maybe we usually get. So we've got a lot of attention thanks to Greg's outreach, so thanks, Greg. I've got a QR code and also the hyperlink there if anyone wants to follow along. I'm gonna get to a short summary of the projects. I'm not gonna name every single project, but I'll try to summarize it the best that I can. And it is in my tables, it's in the order that it is in the amendment if you don't follow along. The full 84-page packet, not including the comments and everything else that's coming. Okay, so as a reminder, amendments take several months due to the additional analysis review, not required of administrative modifications. Here are the main types of updates considered amendment level, as I call them, listed up there. Further details on the amendment policy can be found in Appendix H of the MTP or within the current tip. And I'm sure that we'll include that in the future tip as well. As I mentioned, the time frame, amendments take time. You add up all of these, on the high end, that could take up to 4 months, and this excludes possible federal air quality conformity approval following the TPC approval. So there's been a lot of work that's gone into this one. Here's the timeline for this particular amendment. Today, Greg sent the public comments to the TPC, and I'm going to be asking for TTCC recommendation for TPC approval later this month. And now I'm going to get to the projects. So first, we've got 4 NDOT updates. There's 2 new projects that we're adding and 2 existing projects with TIP funding and other updates this time. I have a few Indiana LPA projects. There's 6 new projects. We've got 2 from Clark County, the CR 311 and Sellersburg improvements and Memphis Blue Lick roadway improvements. We've got 3 from Floyd County, Bridge 38 replacement, the Baylor Wisman, hope I'm pronouncing that right, Hilltop, and then Highway 150, Break Highlander Point. And then from New Albany, we've got Slate Run Road improvements, phase 2. And if anyone has any questions, they can interrupt me or ask afterwards, because I'm gonna try to get through these as quick as I can since we have a full agenda. Now I'll get to the KYTC projects. These first few, they are some new child projects that we're adding to the TIP with some adjustments to properly align the parent projects that they go along with. And then I've got some additional new projects to be added to the TIP and MTP. Several of these are along US 31 or Bardstown Road, as it's known. And some more new projects here with also another set of a child parent project with updates. Few more new ones, and then we get to some safety projects. Existing projects, safety projects, and operational access study project. Okay, then I've listed 13 projects, mainly with TIP funding update. I want to make a note that a few of these are MTP projects that are just now entering the TIP because they've secured some funding. There's also a few TIP projects that were previously listed as group projects. These have now exceeded the group project threshold, so we're removing them from the group projects and putting in the amendment so that they can enter the MTP.
This last slide here of the KYTC projects shows all I-65 bridge projects. So as noted, many of these are just going out of the maintenance group and into the MTP with this update due to funding increases. Okay. So last, I've got some Kentucky LPA projects. I've got 12 Louisville Metro projects to start. A few of these updates might appear minor with just simple phase shifts and open to public updates. I just wanted to point out to the group that sometimes an update to the open to public date can affect the air quality modeling. And so that kicks it out to an amendment level change. If anyone has any questions about why or how that process works, I'd be happy to explain the best I can afterwards. Louisville Metro government is also adding some MTP projects to the TIP for the first time and some new projects to the MTP or long range plan. And then finally, my last two, we have a TARC project to purchase 3 electric buses with the 5339B funds. This came timed with a bunch of smaller administrative modification level updates that we did recently. And then I'm going to finish with U of L's project at Museum Drive intersection. This one is one of those phase shift open to public date updates that fell into the air quality modeling year need for another analysis that I discussed earlier. Yeah, if anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to take them now. Other than that, this is the action requested.
Thank you, Chris. Is there any questions for Chris? Are you able to take these together or you want to separate?
Separate motions, please.
Okay.
NTP first.
The MTP?
Yes.
First, okay. Seeing that there are any questions, I will entertain a motion to recommend approval of the TPC for the Connecting Kentucky and 2050 Metropolitan Transportation Plan. Do we have a motion?
Motion.
We have a motion.
Motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
We have a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye or raise your hand. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay sign. Thank you. Motion carries. Now we will take the recommend approval for the Transportation Improvement Program for 23 to 26. Is there a motion to recommend approval of TPC?
So
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a second. Any further questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Great, motion carries. Thank you, Chris.
thank you all.
Next item on the agenda is Performance Management Plan Annual Update. Spencer?
Good afternoon, everyone. All right, so we've got some changes coming to our safety performance measures, the federally required performance measure that we call PM1. We go over the 2024 crash data that we just received here in the last month. The Kentucky and Indiana state safety targets, and then take questions at the end. So here is 5 years of crash data for the whole region. The yellow bar is 2020, and then 21, 22, 23, 24. We have the number of fatalities there on the left, the fatality rate, the number of serious injuries, the serious injury rate, and the non-motorized fatalities and serious injuries. The good news is all of these numbers seem to be on a downward trend, which is good. Less fatalities, lower fatality rate, less serious injuries, but lower serious injury rate, except for the non-motorized fatalities and serious injuries. Those are actually still going up, been going up since before COVID. And they, continue to increase, even though everything else is lower, so. You know, you can see 2020 fatalities was a pretty bad year, especially considering there was like a unprecedented drop off in DMT. Everybody was driving faster, not a lot of people on the roads. And it even peaked last year with 178 fatalities in our 5 MPO counties, but 2 years ago. 2024 though, way down, 150. We haven't seen the level that low since pre-COVID for sure. The fatality rate is also down. I think some of that's attributable to the DMT returning to like pre-COVID levels. I'd say we're pretty close, if not actually exceeding DMT in some of the counties, which is vehicle miles traveled for anybody that doesn't know. The number of serious injuries has also gone way down. It peaked in 2021 and it dropped a lot 2 years ago. And last year I presented that, I pointed it out. And it's kind of continued, it's kind of stabilized a little bit, but it's continued that trend. Same thing with serious injury rate. Like I said, that non-motorized fatalities, they're continuing to go up. So here you can see serious injuries, kind of stable, Floyd County, Oldham County. Bullitt County decreased a pretty good amount. Jefferson increased a little bit, but still way lower than their 2022 peak. And then Clark has gone slowly up. I think it's the same as the year before, actually, this time around. I think a little bit of that might be driven by there's more people in Clark County than ever. So more people driving out there for work, living out there. So here are the non-motorized fatalities and serious injuries. And you can see on the left side, Jefferson County is really the one that's driving that increase in our region. Bullitt County had a really big spike last year, but it's dropped all the way back down to where it kind of was. They had 10 fatalities and serious injuries last year, or sorry, I keep saying last year, 2 years ago, 2023. This past year, they only had 3.
The wild outlier there.
Yeah, I remember thinking that last year too, because maybe it was even lower before COVID. And you can see 1 or 2. Clark County's kind of stabilized at the same rate. Floyd County, same thing, but Jefferson County, that's where you see the biggest increase for sure. And, you know, of course, most of them are serious injuries, but, you know, anything involving bikes and pedestrians tend to be serious or even fatal because, you know, once a car is going over 25 miles an hour, the, you know, likelihood of a fatality or a serious injury goes way up. So that's where a lot of these are. And then the fatalities by county, you can see a big drop off in Jefferson County. Drops Bullitt, Oldham, kind of stable in Clark and Floyd, Indiana. It's interesting how, like, you know, we'll look at statewide data in Indiana and then at the county level in Kentucky, and even just crossing the river, you notice like they kind of follow the statewide trends a lot, which is odd, but
I'm not mistaken, this might be one of the first years or the first year where we've seen decreases in all 5 counties.
Yeah, and then, you know,
something to be somewhat proud of, I guess.
Yeah.
Still work to do.
Yeah, but on the right track. I think it's probably helped if there's more traffic, people driving slower. I think to build on a lot of this, that was something that would be interesting for us to do in the near future, maybe take the street light and look at vehicle speeds. And maybe compare it to some of this and just see if maybe people are driving slower, maybe there's more traffic out there. Maybe that's helping. I'm sure there's all kinds of different reasons. So we're doing something differently this year. Normally we set our own baselines and targets at the kind of kept our regional levels for 2 states. But over time, I think it's become apparent that, you know, maybe our time would be better used elsewhere and we'll just adopt the statewide targets. So you'll see up there's actually a different number for Kentucky and Indiana for each of the 5 things: fatalities, fatality rate, serious injuries, serious injury rate, and non-motorized fatalities and serious injuries. It seems like we were the only ones in the state of Kentucky, and I'm not sure about Indiana.
I think we were both states. I think there may have been
There
other
were.
ones. There might have been one, but
Yeah.
others, but we
We were the
stayed
only
on
ones on our own.
Yeah.
And, you know,
you know, we've had this conversation about it every year about this, for those that have been around for a while, you know, the way that the feds require you to set your targets allows virtually no room to be aspirational to say, hey, we're gonna program these projects to fix this problem. It's a target, as you can see, is through 2025. So we only have 10 and a half months left of 2025, and we have 4 years plus a month and a half that are already in the rearview mirror, but we're calling that our target. And so and Spencer just mentioned it, we're gonna choose the other way, the other option we've always had, but this go around.
It's kind of just like the PM, I think it's PM2, it's the pavement. We use the safe target for that as well. You know, the top end safe targets probably save a lot of time, especially around this time of year. It's always difficult to do because we didn't really get the crash data until about towards the end of January, and then we have to have it like less than a month. So this will make it longer, and I think it'll still be more meaningful, and we can still track all that other data, you know, all this stuff, all the bar charts in the background.
The ongoing Safe Streets and Roads for All Action Planning Grant, you know, that's for those of you who've been a part of that, and it's been many of you, that focus is exclusively on fatalities and serious injuries. And if there's no other evidence that we are committed to working on reducing those things, we could set all the targets in the world for the next 10 months, but those projects and those things that come out of that, and that analysis I think has been enlightening too. That frankly, that's what means more than setting these targets in this way, and it shows that commitment to seeking the working with the states and working with local communities and reducing each and every one of these.
Yeah. So take any questions now, and also real quick too, Andy, I had it in there that it's nice, it always has been in the past. We need TPCCs.
Yeah, I think so, because what we'll be seeking ultimately the TPC approval is approval for us to go forth and go ahead and say that we're committing to support the state's targets, right? In the other years, we said, hey, here's our targets that we're going to be so smart or so dumb to create on our own, but now we're going to say we're going to support the state's targets. And as Spencer said, the same way the other MPs do.
Are there any questions?
So I don't know which one to use it for, but with the Safe Streets for All action plan being worked on, how does that align the Vision Zero with those targets that you're setting?
That's been part of the conversation over the years too, and Louisville Metro has made a point about that, right? That as a community that has committed to support the Vision Zero, and that's a commitment that each agency had to make through the SS4A planning process too. How can you say we see zero in our future while at the same time there's going to be 700 in our state or something like that, whatever those numbers were for fatalities? That's a tricky one, and I've not heard a great answer for that question. I think it's really fair to say that both of those things can be aligned in your actions and the realistic, practical actions over the coming years in our planning and our design of projects. We're a long way from zero. There's no doubt about that, but it's going to take, as some of they say, you can have a full day in Kentucky with 0 fatal crashes. That's a good day because of the number, that's several hundred per year. And if you can do one day, you can string another day together, and it's that sort of mentality that
So those numbers were for the whole state, not for
Yes,
each
ma'am.
town. Okay.
That's right. That's right. The numbers on the one that last table that
Yeah.
yes.
Okay.
And so each state has to set their own targets. State DOT has to set their own targets, and they must do so by I believe it's the end of August of each year. And so then the NPOs have 180 days into February to choose one or the other option. Just outright support the state's targets or create regional targets on our own.
Thank you. Any other questions for Spencer? This is an action item. I would entertain a motion to recommend to TPC the FHWA PM1 performance measures. We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by raising your hand or saying aye.
Aye.
Hi.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Spencer. Next item on the agenda is the TPC Working Group recommendations for the 24 call for projects. Brady?
So, health projects, we've been talking about health projects since June of 2024. Application period opened in August, went through all these different steps. And we're finally to the last step here, where I have recommendations from the TTCC working group to bring to this body. Who will be seeking action for a recommendation to approve the TTCC working group's recommendation to go to the TPC on our February TPC meeting in a couple weeks. In your packet, there's a summary information of the projects that are recommended to receive some additional funding. As well as a link if you want the more detailed information on which project is proposed to get how much funding in which phase. You can use this QR code, so we have a couple seconds to do that if you need to. That QR code is also in your packet as well as a link in the meeting packet as well, so you can look at those more in detail if you haven't already. And I would like to thank all of the TTCC working group members who over the last couple of months been able to take the time to work with the staff to come to these recommendations. There's a lot of working time. I know that everyone in that group is busy with all of your own activities, so we appreciate your extra help in this effort. Okay, so I'm going to start with Kentucky. Just as a reminder of where we started at here, there were about 41 total applications that were submitted from our Kentucky sponsors for the 3 separate programs, STB, CRP, and TA programs. The total of those requests amounted to almost $116 million, whereas we only had about 56 million to give to projects at this time. So there's a lot more requested than available. But there are several projects that were applied for that didn't have room to be able to fit all requests. Just a little bit of a summary of the process from the TTCC working group. The group considered a variety of different strategies for prioritizing projects and ended up focusing on existing MPO dedicated projects. There are many projects, especially in the STBG program on the Kentucky side, that we have already committed funds to, and we received, I believe it was over $100 million of additional funds needed for just the ones that are already on the books. So so the final result of the recommendations ended up being a finish what you start approach. About 96% of all the recommended funding that we're going to talk about today is going to existing MPO dedicated projects that need additional funds for either construction phases or other phases of their projects. The work group prioritized the projects that had the highest average working group ranking. Each individual working group member were able to rank all of the projects based on a variety of factors that included project's MTP score, which relates directly back to our MTP goals at KIPTA. Public feedback, we had a public feedback process before the working group meetings, internal project sponsor priority rankings, and a variety of other factors that were a part of the application process for this call for projects. Another thing to note is that the demand for funding for projects in the earlier fiscal years that were available, fiscal years 25 through 27, was much higher than the demand for funding in fiscal year 28 and 29. In terms of the projects that were selected, that's mostly because most of the projects that were selected are existing projects that project sponsors are trying to get completed sooner. And with that comes some moving around of some project phases we'll talk about in a little bit. So I'll talk about the TA recommendations, quick summary. There were 3 TA project applications for existing projects. All of them are recommended to receive funding. You can see them there. McNeely Lake Park segment, Medora Jefferson Memorial Forest, and Crumbs Lane Sidewalk Phase 1. All recommended to receive TA funding. The total of that funding adds up to about $4.2 million. If those three projects were recommended for approval, this is how the TA projected carryover balance would look like. Keep in mind, in Kentucky, funding carries over from year to year. So, for example, in 2028, there's about $2.4 million available on that chart there. That's just about the full allocation amount that is sub-allocated to us in 2028 is our estimation. And then in 2029, you see the 4.8 million. That is the full allocation amount in 2029 plus that number in 2028 that's carried over. So the important thing when we're looking at these charts is the columns in red. 2029 shows at the end of all the fiscal years, after all the carried over amounts, how much money is remaining at the end of fiscal year 29 as our tracking sheet sits today. And that would be about $4.8 million. If you notice in fiscal year 27, it shows 0. That means that by the end of fiscal year 27, included, so what's included in programmed in fiscal year 25, 26, and 27, it zeroes out by the end of fiscal year 27. So we save some money in fiscal year 25 and 26. There's a large construction phase that's about $5 or $6 million for one project for Little Metro, and then that zeroes it out. So that's what the carryover balance would look like if these recommendations are made for the TA program. Okay, the next one is the CRP program in Kentucky. There are 5 projects here that are recommended to receive some funds. They're all metro projects requesting additional funding. There are 2 CRP project applications that were not recommended for approval. They were also Global Metro projects asking for construction phases, each one asking for around $10 million each, which CRP program, as I kind of just showed you, we only get 2.4 a year. So we just didn't have enough available to fund all of the applications for the CRP program. So those are the 5 recommended here. And look at the CRP projected carryover balance. You see that the carryover balance zeroes out in fiscal year 26. We're slightly over programmed in fiscal year 25. Reasonable amount. It's safe to assume that we probably won't authorize all of the program funds in fiscal year 25 based on previous year's ability to authorize funds. In fiscal year 27, you see the $1.9 million number in the black that's available. That saved up a little bit to where the end of fiscal year 29, you have a little over $1 million still unprogrammed. So that gives us a little bit of wiggle room. And it's really just kind of the buffer between what was applied for and what we can actually put reasonably towards the project. The only other projects were $10 million requests, so we can fund those with $1 million. And the STBG program recommendations, there is a large list here comprising several different agencies. Global Metro, Oldham County, Jefferson Town, KYPC, KIPTA, Global Metro's CARE program as well. We'll get to the next slide. All these projects asking for a variety of different amounts of money that you can see there. Some of them large asks, the one-way street conversion, the two-way phase 1 project for Metro, requested $9 million additional dollars, as well as KYTC's KY 864 project requesting an additional $8 million for their primarily their construction phase. Those are some of the highlights. If anyone has any questions about any of these, just let me know. Here's the remainder of the list. That wasn't all of them. There's a few more on here. A planning study for Will County for $200,000 is a new project. There are only 2 new projects that were recommended for additional funding. That's a study for Will County that's shown there, as well as some planning funds and design funds for the Louisville, for a potential downtown Louisville Transit Center as requested by TARC. That was a project that was of, I had a high level discussion, and interest from the working group to fund in the future. That is a potential transformative project that could affect transit in the Kipta region for the next several decades at minimum. However, that project is so early in the process that the working group thought deemed it wise to fund earlier phases, hence the $1.4 million for planning and design. Once those particularly the planning phase has begun and TARC is able to get a better idea of what the cost estimate will be for that project, that is project that could be considered in the future for true implementation dollars. And once again, that's all of course per the approval of this spot and the TPC. Okay, so those are all the STBG recommendations. The total amount of STBG recommendations totaled up to almost $37 million of funds applied. As well, there's a couple other project changes associated with these STBG changes. So I mentioned how a lot of the demand is in earlier fiscal years, 25 through 27, as opposed to 28, 29. Well, that requires some projects moving around a little bit in order to make room, money available in the earlier years. A few other projects need to be pushed back a little bit. So there's a couple projects that have a schedule that it would be advantageous to them in terms of Kipta's phase shift policy to move back a phase for free in order to make room for other projects to be funded earlier. That includes Oldham County's KY 22 Full Length Intersection Improvement Project and Jefferson Town's project there you see as well. So no penalty to those projects, but they did have adjustments to their schedule to make room for earlier funding in earlier years for different projects, as well as the historic multi-use segment, Trail Segment C, the Mount Washington project. Currently had a split of TA funds, SDBG MPO funds, and SDBG state funds. The recommendation from the group is to swap the existing TA funds for this Mount Washington project to bring it all into the SDBG bucket to fund the construction phase and make it a simpler administration process for that project to hopefully get it done a little sooner and less complicated. Okay, so with all of those adjustments, the SDBG carryover balance would look something like this. We have $10 million still unprogrammed in 2025. Once again, the most important years we're looking at here is 2027, 2029. We see a negative $13 million balance in 2027, and you may ask Brady, that seems a little aggressive to overprogram $13 million. I'll talk about that in just a minute. 2029 here, there's still $4.7 million available in 2029 in this scenario, showing that there's still a little bit of extra money at the very back end that could be programmed in the future. However, I have been working on updating what the actual availability of STBG funds is with KYTC program management and central office for several months. I wasn't able to receive a confirming answer on my questions until January 15th, which was 2 days before the last TTCC working group meeting. And it's pretty important in terms of our STBG program. So last several months, I've been reviewing all of the Kipta KYTC agreements that have gone on since 2008 to flex SLO funds or STBG funds to KYTC for a dollar for dollar match of state funds or other funds. Mostly to help KYTC with their what's the term, reallocation or
August redistribution.
August redistribution process is typically how those come about. And so basically that's created an IOU bucket. So Kipta has actual STBG funds that are in the federal FEMA system that shows Kipta has this much STBG MPO funding or SLO funding. And then there's a separate bucket of KYTC IOUs where we swapped STBG funds with state funds to be named later, dollar for dollar match. And there's a discrepancy in what was in the Kipta tracking sheet versus what was reality. That was my concern. after reconciling KYTC, was able to determine that there's an additional $18,060,180 of this IOU bucket that KIPTA has available to us, more than we thought before. So as of January 15th, there's $119 million, that number in the bottom left box of the IOU budget for KYTC. As of December 4th of the FEMA's W10A status of funds report, there is just under $40 million of actual STBG federal funds allocated to KIPTA. You combine those two numbers together, you get $159 million available in fiscal year 25 to KIPTA. That's, once again, that's $18 million more than we thought we had confirmed several months ago. So if you include the additional found money, then the updated carryover balance looks like, it did look like this. That's what I just showed you. And then the numbers changed to that with the additional 18 million. So that puts you in 2027 of being over programmed by just $3 million, which is perfectly reasonable considering the amount of money we're talking about. And there's still $22 million in fiscal year 29 that could be programmed in the future to projects.
Keep in mind, this doesn't account for the cost increase reserve too. That would be another buffer.
Yes.
Came to that.
That's true, which is about $4.5 million each fiscal year. There is a 20% cost increase reserve. That's correct. So typically, and so the question is, it's so late in the game, we found $18 million. What do we do with that? Do we go ahead and program it now as part of just call projects, or do we hold off on that and have a separate call for projects for this additional found money? Typically, KIPTA only holds call projects once every 2 years, according to the project management guidebook. But the working group and staff would recommend that we hold a separate call for projects later in 2025 that is more focused on just this $18 million found in that STBG program. The reason for that is a few things. One, probably more fair to project sponsors who maybe saw the initial requests of KIPTA saying, hey, we only have $50 million. So sponsors could say, well, I'm only going to spend 1 or 2 projects because there's not that much money available. If we had said on the front end, actually, we have $70 to $75 million, there may have been different applications submitted. So in fairness to all the project sponsors, that's one reason we would request to have a separate call for projects for this newfound money. Also just allows time for project sponsors to readjust their priorities with new information. They know these projects that are recommended today will get funded, so how does that adjust your requests next year? Also, we talked about the SS4A program happening. Those plans should be wrapped up this summer. This coming
Spring even, yeah.
So potentially that could be before a separate call for projects where once again, perhaps there would do priorities based on this SS4A planning study, highlighting safety in the region. So that would be a recommendation from the staff, is to hold off on that remaining funding for a separate call for projects, which we can talk more in detail about later. Later this year, exactly when and how that would happen. Okay, I mentioned the downtown mobile transit center. So one more note about that. Something to consider for the future. This is the remaining balances for the CRP and TA programs. If you look in fiscal year 29, the right column for both of these, there's $1 million still unprogrammed in CRP, and there's almost $5 million unprogrammed in TA funds. The early preliminary estimation for how much the construction phase of this transit center would cost was about $15 million federal. That's early estimations that may change with the planning and design of the center. But the reason I show this is there's $6 million available today in fiscal year 29. And if we, as a KIPTA region, are able to kind of keep our hands out of the cookie jar a little bit, if this project becomes a priority to fund in the future, by fiscal year 31, we could have $15 to $16 million to be able to program for the CRP and TA program. No guarantee that that needs to happen. There's a lot of time to discuss that, but it's just something to consider. If this becomes a priority project in the future, then we can potentially fund it without even having to dip into the more competitive STBG bucket, in the future. Okay, that's all I have for Kentucky. And then Indiana's a lot more simple and it's a lot more simple. 10 applications, a total requested amount of about $23.5 million. And with the failure of the Mount Tabor Road project, that opened up $4.6 million to be able to add into this bulk projects process, meaning there ended up being about $20 million available to program. And those numbers are a lot closer than they were in Kentucky between what is wanted and what we have. And so we were able to fund at least partially all of the requests in Indiana. So the projects you see in green here are projects that are partially funded. Memphis Blue Lake Road upgrade at this time, we're just funding a planning study for that project. And Baylor Wisman Hilltop is not completely 80-20 or 90-10 on that project. It's overmatched by Floyd County at this time, but still able to fund enough to where Floyd County would like to move forward with the project if the funds are provided. And all the other projects, 6 new, 4 existing, plus a little bit of money for the Downtown Transit Center planning study are fully funded through the various programs you can see there on the right. And if all of those changes happen in Indiana, you see a zeroed out balance in 27, 28, and 29, $410,000 available in, or sorry, zeroed out balance in 27, 28, and 30, and $410,000 still unprogrammed in 29. 26, next fiscal year, there's still about $1 million unprogrammed, so that'll be something you'll hear about in the future, I'm sure. And in fiscal year 25, the $1.8 million, there's nothing else that we can put toward projects in such a short period of time. That money is currently planned to go to NDOT to be placed towards a NDOT project within the Kittimer region at the end of fiscal year 25. So if anyone has any questions, I'm happy to answer whatever I can. And then after that, an action requested to recommend approval of these recommendations from the TDC.
Thank you, Brady. Is there any questions?
I appreciate the presentation, a couple questions, and then the next slide you answered it, so good job.
Any other questions for Brady?
I don't have a question, but I just want to, work with Brady and Greg, all of the staff did. It was a good committee to be on, but these guys did a great job.
Yeah, Brady got that very, very, very well organized. It's a hard thing to keep straight. It'd be hard to do one state by one rule book, but we have to do 2 states by 2 rule books, and those rules are not opposite each other, but in essence they are, right? The carryovers at the top of that list. So again, thanks to Brady and other staff for getting us through to this point.
Yeah, thank you, Brady. We found the extra money too.
Yes, Andy, and he did some forensic accounting on all of our behalf to the tune of $18 million. So yes.
Is that your internal George committee?
Should be, yes, yes.
Thank you, Brady. Seeing no other questions, I will entertain a motion to recommend approval of the working group's 2024 call for project recommendations. Do I have a motion? You have a motion? Is there a second?
Second.
We have a second. Any further discussions? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. And then motion carries. Thank you very much, Brady. Next item on the agenda is the KYTC shift program. Andy?
Yeah, I don't have a whole lot to share at this time, but I do want to announce that the shift 2026 is underway. For those that are not from Kentucky or are new to the region or new to Kentucky, SHIFT stands for Strategic Highway Investment Formula for Tomorrow, as it says on the screen up there. KYTC has just put out the SHIFT schedule, which is what I'm showing to you guys. It came out in the last month or so, I guess. And so the schedule is a lot like prior years, for those that have been around a time or two. Probably and very importantly on this schedule, as it relates to us as a TTCC, us as an MPO, is this idea of sponsorship. Remember, sponsorship is the very first cut where the ads and the MPOs and the highway districts have a prescribed number of projects that we each can sponsor. And by sponsoring that project, that means that project goes to the next step of the process where it gets a score through the KYTC scoring system. So those are due in early May. And so what that means for us is that we should expect to have some sponsorships approved at the TTCC or officially by the TPC, but discussed by this body at our April meeting. Okay, so April we'll talk sponsorships, and hopefully we'll come to some good conclusions there. Again, that cut is never very deep. In other words, there seems to be plenty of sponsorships to go around. Remember, the whole end goal of this is to turn it into a highway plan, and there's far more projects that get sponsored and end up in the highway plan. So after that May time period, KYTC does their work on it. It goes through the scoring process. We understand there's a few changes in the scoring process, not overhaul, but a few changes that sound like they're good improvements. The scoring system, I think, is getting more complicated, as in it's be harder to describe to everyone. Having said that, the changes they're making make a lot of sense in terms of improvements to like the credit you get for having bike ped as part of your project, resilience of a project, et cetera. Some of those things that are hard, sometimes are hard to measure. I think one of them, I think in the last go around, I think if you just said you're going to do a bike and ped improvement, you got like full points, I think it was. And now there's a little nuance to it. So it depends on the quality and the character of the bike and ped improvements, among other changes. So nonetheless, the project will get scored. That'll happen over the summer. And then our next important deadline is by September 5th or so. And that's when we must get those boosts. Remember, the boosts is when the scores that come out of the black box, let's call it scoring system that KYTC puts out, that accounts for 80% or up to 80 points on a 100 scale. The other 20 points come from the boosting process. So the highway district can boost a series of projects, and they get some allocated to them, District 5 in our case. The KIPTA ad and the KIPTA MPO also have a number of projects that we can boost in our counties. And so we can boost the same projects. So if a project was the best project on earth, it got 80 points out of the scoring system. KYTC District 5 would boost it because it's an amazing project. KIPTA would boost it because it's an amazing project. That would get 100 points, and that would be sitting pretty for that final score as that highway plan gets built. So September is that deadline. And so what that means to us, kind of like the last one, is that we'll need to deliberate over those on or by our August meeting. Okay, so we'll get the scores probably in over the summer, but then we'll have to turn those around and choose our boosts, and we'll probably establish a working group at some point to do those boosts. One of the things that I think we've been in conversation with District 5 about this year, this go around, is getting the state legislators involved in the process earlier in the process. Okay, remember, in essence, they have the final say. The recommended highway plan happens, in the fall, and then in the winter and spring, the General Assembly takes it and it becomes part of the enacted highway plan. And so their feedback is going to happen early next year. So I think it's better, we think it's better to get that feedback earlier, right? Doesn't it make most sense to favor at least in our sponsorship, the projects that are likely to be a part of that enacted highway plan? Wouldn't that be a good idea? And so one thing we're going to try to pull off in conjunction with District 5, and it's going to be tricky given the timing. We're going to try to host a couple things. One might be some sort of summit or meeting that would happen in March. So it's going to be a quick turnaround. Hey, state senator, hey, state rep, come to maybe this room, come to KIPTA to talk about projects in your district. We'll go over what we've got, get their feedback, and we will include that in our prioritization for sponsorships. The tricky part is they are pretty busy this time of year, aren't they? And they're going to be in Frankfurt, not in the Louisville area this time of the year. And so we may have to, so that may not work schedule wise, but we've got another trick up our sleeves. We're gonna create, Zach and his team are creating a robust, a story map. So, hey, state senator, hey, state rep, love to have you at KIPTA. Sorry, you can't make it. I know you're busy. If you can't make it, check out this story map and click here and click here and click here and look at you look at your district, look at these projects that are under contention, and then provide us some feedback through that means. And so hopefully that will turn into some productive feedback. Again, it's up to the TPC as far as I'm concerned. Which projects get both sponsored and boosted. It's not up to the General Assembly to do that. But I think we value their feedback and input. We certainly would, or I think we would. And so hopefully this can be a, maybe even become a model to be used elsewhere. I wish we had more time, but there just isn't time. There isn't the time to do it in a more robust way, given their schedules in Frankfurt. Tom or Tracy, do you have anything else you want to add about SHIFT that I might have overlooked?
Well, I would just say that the earlier we involve the legislature in the process, the better off we are, because if they have priority projects that they're interested in funding, if they may have coordinated with the government, but didn't get identified early in the SHIFT process, they just add them in later as an extra project, and it would be better to see how all the projects flow through the program and how they score and how they benefit the city. They get selected for the highway plan.
Hopefully it can be a cleaner enacted highway plan for that reason. You know, they represent the same jurisdictions that you all do as local government leaders. They're hearing the same complaints about the same roads, presumably. And so there's no reason it should ever be at odds, you know, and so, but to get these more aligned, I think it's got a lot of potential. I'll say that. Would you? I hope you agree.
Yes. And one more thing, the best projects usually are the ones that the legislature is familiar with. They all recognize it as a priority, which sort of sounds simple, but you know, when you have 200 projects or 300 projects, it wires you. So the earlier we can coordinate and get a sensible list of projects together that we all agree on, the better off.
Hopefully it's very much a two-way street at those meetings or in those interactions, and that they aren't just telling us, hey, these are the only ones that I want to see in the enacted highway plan. Hopefully it can be, hey, state senator, state rep, here's the ones that are a large part of our MPP and TIP and our local communities have vetted and have said are real important, that are in need of some additional funds or some state funds or federal funds through the highway plan process. Hopefully it can be maybe get that awareness that may or may not be there, should be there, hope it's there, and maybe this can help it be there.
Get funded and get built. Yeah.
And hopefully limit the amount of over promising that's in the highway plan, right? To have a realistic schedule, a realistic slate of projects. Hopefully this can help that. If done right, I think it could. The SHIFT process I think it's helped that over the last decade. I think it has. So
thank you, Andy. Any other questions for Andy? Next time on the agenda is the roadway classification update. Chris and Zach.
A little bit of joint presentation. I'm just gonna start and then I'm gonna move it to Zach to give you guys a little map demonstration. So we're gonna talk about the roadway functional classification update. Back in November, a brief presentation was given to the TTCC where I summarized how the recently updated FHWA adjusted urbanized boundary relates to the updates of the roadway functional classification. I shared some key concepts described in the 2023 edition of FHWA's concepts, criteria, and procedures for the updates. I outlined KIPTA's plan and timeline for submitting locally derived recommendations to each of the state transportation agencies. And now our next step is to coordinate with you all. And I'm going to be reaching out for assistance organizing and inviting local planners and officials who are interested in participating. Similar to the work we did for updating the urbanized area boundaries, the plan is to come to you in person for some working meetings in which we're going to share a starter draft prepared by KIPTA staff based on the FHWA guidance. At the meetings, we'd like to review and discuss the updates. Go over any concerns or questions anyone has, and then also make potential edits as needed to prepare for the submissions to the states. We envision meetings set in each of the 5 main KIPTA counties where any local jurisdictions or regional highway planners can attend. So on that note, here's Zach to give you guys a little sample of what we've been looking at as we start the plan.
Good afternoon. Look up there, you can see a map that I created. Technically, there's the functionally classified roads that we have published on our website right now. Only this includes the rural functional classified roads as well. There are the dash lines. It's probably hard to see on the map from here, but the dash lines, anything outside of that urbanized area boundary that's been adjusted, not the jagged. Anything outside of it is rural, anything within it is urban, and so that's the main change we've made so far, is just distinguishing between the two. You can see by the legend what the classifications are from 1 to 7, 1 being the interstates, limited access, faster speed limits, far more traffic volume. And as it goes down the classifications, those each become less and less. When Chris talked about the draft, some of the different layers we were going to overlay to kind of do some of the analysis to determine where the first changes should be, we're going to be traffic volume using the AADT data we got from our street light. And our staff was going to just do like a preliminary draft or kind of a concept to bring out and show to you, and then we can discuss. There might be some local input that you guys can give us, or hey, this road has actually been, gone from 2 lanes to 4 lanes, or it's significant traffic has picked up here. And we can work together to adjust these.
It's going before the Natural Resources and Energy Committee tomorrow morning.
I think that's a question.
I'm hoping that y'all have worked.
Hold on just a second.
There, I got it.
Apologize.
Okay. So anyway, that's all I had for you. We'll have an application similar to this that we can edit on the fly. And I'll probably also print some big paper maps out because it's just easier, I think, to have something tangible in your hand to write on or look at and then compare to the screen. So that's all I got for you guys.
Chris, when are you gonna be sending the invitations out?
Probably the end of this week.
Yeah, so it's something that's real limited, so meetings in March.
Throughout March, yeah, I'll work with, maybe one main rep from each county to find a place and find a time. And like I said, we'll come to you unless for some reason it's easier to come here. Potentially, we could have Floyd and Clark County together, but we don't need to.
Yeah, we can host it in one of your all spots that, maybe has a screen, or even if it doesn't, we could figure something else out. And have a, 45-minute discussion or whatever it might take to go over the entire county, and maybe the mayor, small town mayors can join if they'd like to, or as a county rep, you can represent the entire county on some of these things. There's no good reason to make overarching overhaul. There's no good reason to do overhauls. This is kind of rough around the edges, get it fixed up. Yeah.
Some of the changes are needed based on the update, but then we figure we might as well make other changes that seem like it's time and it's reasonable within the guidelines.
Yeah, one notable example was one of the projects that Brady was talking about that got funded, the Memphis Blue Lick over in Clark County. That road, at least west of the interstate, is still classified as a local functionally classified road. Well, that doesn't make any sense if this is a hierarchical thing with, to have a interstate with an interchange with a locally functionally classified road. There's several classifications that are in between that probably fit that road better. So those are, but maybe that fit 30 years ago, or whenever the last time that road got updated or something like that. So those are the type of things that we will be looking for local knowledge on and getting fixed up by, but keeping it within that FHWA framework. There's no reason to abuse the process either.
Great.
There's
Thank
no
you.
action requested.
Okay, thank you, Zach. Next item on the agenda is the cost increase. Staff will provide an update, Brady.
So separate from the bulk projects, there is the STBG cost increase reserve, which we talked about a little bit ago. It's like $4.5 million typically each year that's set aside for cost increases or phases that are in that specific year. So, the project management guidebook, shows there are 4 kind of opportunities to access the cost increase reserve, that the application period is quarterly. And so one of them is now. So application period opened February 5th. I sent an email out to everyone. If you didn't get that information, please reach out to me and I can forward you the details. And it runs through March 4th. Applications will be considered at the biannual Kentucky Dedicated Project Review meeting, which will happen on March 6th. And then recommendation from that group will go to the TPCC in March. And then the TPC for any cost increases for fiscal year 25 project basis. The next opportunity for this cost increase reserve, if funds are still available, if we don't allocate them all this go round, will be in May. Also of note that if you're a project sponsor, we have these 4 dedicated periods to submit cost increases for this reserve, but you're welcome to submit. The application period is, or the application's open anytime. You can submit them whenever you want to, but we have 4 opportunities specifically set aside so that folks are aware that that's something available to them. Just as a reminder of where we're at, we've already had a few projects that had approvals in fiscal year 25. You can see them there. So we started originally with the $5.1 million number to start the fiscal year, including the carryover from fiscal year 24 that wasn't spent. We have almost $2 million that's already been approved, and that leaves us with about $3.2 million remaining as of today in the fiscal year 25 STBG cost increase reserve. Couple notes. As I've said before, this reserve is available to all existing MPO dedicated projects. The request must be for a fiscal year 25 project phase specifically. CRP and TA projects are eligible to request funds from the STBG cost increase reserve, but it does come with a caveat that they must show KIPTA concurrence from KYTC that the Office of Administration will not change for that project if granted STBG funds. When combining funding sources, there are sometimes issues that slow the project down to moving along, and that's not something that we want to do. So we need some concurrence with KYTC in terms of the administration of the project, that there won't be an issue if we add STBG funds to a CRP and TA project, but you can submit applications for those. And then lastly, STBG cost increase reserve is essentially a first come, first served basis, but still must be approved by the TPC. Just because you submit an application, there's money available, doesn't necessarily mean it will be approved. But if we have $3.2 million available, all of that could be approved in March, and then there wouldn't be any left for the rest of fiscal year 25. It kind of depends on how the requests go in that regard. So if you have requests that you know, submit them by March 4th. And no action, just if there's any questions.
Thank you, Brady. Any questions for Brady? Looking forward to that. Next time on the agenda is other business. Andy?
Yes, sir. I've got 3 quick items, I think. One, I was, by my count, I was taking a tally up here. We've got 20 voting member agencies that have joined us today, either online or in person. So I appreciate everybody's support, and that's a big number. It's a big number. Thank you all for being here. 5 advisory member agencies I want to recognize as well. So thank you all for your support too. Amongst those, I want to recognize some of the people who got in a little bit late. Tanya Higdon from Federal Highways Kentucky Division. Thank you for joining us, Tanya. Jennifer Commissar Kern and Mark Knoll, both from Louisville Metro Public Works. They've been on for the vast majority of the meeting. So thank you all for joining us. And then last but not least, certainly not least, I think we all need to recognize Mr. Matt Meunier for his outgoing chairmanship. He's been our chairman for 2 years. And he is not only a fine TCCC chairman, he's a fine representative of local government that I think a lot of y'all can look up to and see the good work going on in Jefferson Town. And we certainly appreciate his support of KIPTA, J-Town's support of KIPTA, the home of KIPTA, if you will. And so we've got Matt a small token. It's not a weapon. It's an engraved Louisville Slugger bat recognizing his TTCC chairmanship over the last couple of years. So with that, I want to say thank you in formal in front of the whole group, and thank you, Matt, for your support over the years.
Well, I appreciate that. It's always been a pleasure to work with the staff and all these agencies to move these transportation projects forward, and it's important to be a part of the process. So appreciate that. Appreciate your confidence. So, and I look forward to sitting on over there now. Aida takes the chair and Jim be a vice chair. So these are some good movements that are happening here in KIPTA. So I appreciate it.
We're gonna hear some comments from the woodwork out there. From the upper deck. So that concludes my other business. If there's any others, I'd be happy to.
Is there any other business for this committee? If not, I entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Motion in the second. Mr. Greeley. All those in favor signify by saying aye. No.
Aye.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye, everybody. See you next
Have a
time.
good rest of your week.
You too. Thank you, Greg.
Thanks,
Thank you.